There you go, Charles. Mafia music.
Well done.
Yeah, the Squadfather, part 3. Because he's coming back.
Well done.
It's like they're digging up. The next step is digging up dead candidates, but they're dredging out all the octogenarians. How are you feeling today, Charles?
I'm feeling well. I had a nice dinner, thanks to my new friends here, or some of my new friends here in Penang and at their house. But, the bottom line, it's pretty tough to rage against the machine when you are the machine. And I say that because there's data, Zero Hedge story, that these supposed spontaneous rallies where people are coming out, in some cases in red places, to cheer on AOC and the waiter from Peter Luger's, who pretends that he's a senator from Vermont and he's actually from whatever. These people who are going to these events, it's all staged. The Trump events were certainly not staged. If the best you can do at this late date is trot out communists, grumpy meets stupid, a bunch of communists who want to rage against the fact that there's inequality in the distribution of something. I mean, even if you go and you put sand particles under the microscope in the desert, there's an unequal distribution of sand particles in the desert. I mean, there's no such thing as a bell curve outcome in nature, in any kind of contest. And if the best you can do is say that, they're screaming about there's a bunch of rich people. Well, listen, Bernie, have you created a new payment system, a rocket company, a car company, a robot company, a boring company, a Neuralink company? Have you done any of that? Have you ever worked in the private sector? Here, Elon Musk, there's an unequal distribution of children in his family because he's a maniac. He has 14 kids. What are you going to do about that, Bernie? Take away some of his kids? I mean, it's just the fact that I think we're going to find that the coverage of these rallies was also rigged. I mean, it's a psyop. That's what the Democratic Party is now reduced to. It's a psyop against a natural outpouring of people. You used to be a Democrat. I used to be a Republican. We are all sick and tired of this bullshit of pinheads maybe showing up to work, but definitely any chance there's to go on a private jet or go to a fancy conference or a fancy dinner or get paid to say 60 seconds worth of nonsense or have a ghostwriter write a book for you. We're sick of this theater. It's bad theater. And if your best response is to pretend that there's really a natural outpouring for censorship and communism, and that we ought to bring back, the vampires and the witches who sit atop what remains of the Democrat Party, so they can tell us how to live our lives on a daily basis. Nobody wants that shit. Nobody. And I think they're gonna keep it up for a while, as long as they can. But the professional polling, Mark Penn was on, I think, Fox, and he's, I knew him in high school, actually, but not well. He's older than I am, but he's an expert on polling. He says the polls are horrifically bad for the Democratic Party. That the moderates in the Democratic Party are fleeing. So the Democratic Party is morphing into Mao Zedong and Che Guevara, and
in the form of
people.
Jasmine Crockett and AOC.
Right. I mean, it's like nobody wants any of that. And nothing about these talking points out of the Democrat, nothing about the rallies are real. And people see right through this bullshit.
Yeah.
No,
there's no doubt. People asking about your interview with Lionel. People were excited to see you back in the saddle with Lionel.
Yeah, it was fun. Lionel it was entertaining. You've rehearsed me well. I think we've done about 1,000 videos now. And if you do 1,000 90-minute, 2-hour videos, however long they are, you learn how to answer questions quickly. And Lionel doesn't seem he has, access to the fountain of youth. He doesn't seem to change the way he looks. He looks to me the same as he did back in 2016, 17 when I did some videos with him.
Yeah, maybe slightly grayer in the mustache, like an old hound.
Could be. But, we drilled into the Clinton Foundation, and it takes a while to appreciate the enormity of that grift, because it's just so pervasive, so many bad donors, so many bad projects. And at the very beginning of it, while I do think I know a fair amount about finance and accounting, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm certainly not a charity law expert. So it took me a while to appreciate some of the finer points, and we went back into those, as you and I have done, starting in June of 2017, multiple times. But he does, I guess, have 291,000 subscribers, and so that video last night had 11,000 views. I don't know how many it has now, but it was fun. And it was more fun, frankly, the Dubinsky interview. That both were great. What does it say there?
That says 14K views.
And look at the likes, dislikes.
Oh yeah.
But the last night there were 1.3 thousand likes and no dislikes. So I tweeted out. Right. I know, because I tweeted out to Bill, Hillary, Chelsea Clinton, and Angel Urena and people like that. And I said, here's your chance to try to disagree with the substance of what I say here. And then I said to Urena, you're probably too stupid to understand this. But
yeah, he's just got 41 dislikes bought from some sort of YouTube hacking channel. But you also have a lot of comments here, Charles, 239 comments. So people are wanting to interact with this content. It's unfortunate that the social engineers have stamped out the original Jason Goodman channel, because it would certainly be up in this territory by now. Lionel
sure.
was around there when I first started Crowdsource the Truth. And I mean, that's their goal, obviously, is to prevent this message from gaining traction. Because, look, Charles, this is the same thing we see the Democrats doing everywhere. They can't compete in the arena of good ideas, so they have to cheat. They have to, slash your tires and paint swastikas on your Tesla and put sugar in the gas tank if you aren't driving a Tesla.
Yeah, it's really silly. And again, we have to remember that the 60s, we're now close to, the apex of the anti-the man rallies, I think, was 1968. And so you started to see protests against the Vietnam War and stuff like that. And it came to a head beginning in 68, escalated in 69 and 70. And by the time I got to Yale in 74, it kind of died down. But let's use 65 to make that an easy number to work with. That was 60 freaking years ago. Right? And in the intervening time, in 1965, if you go and you look at the data put out by our government, which is very suspicious now, it used to be nonpartisan exercise, you could trust it. I don't trust anything the government puts out, even under Trump, because he hasn't had a chance to clean out the mess yet. But when you just take the government numbers and you look at total government spending at the federal level, and you look at how much of that was military, and then how much of it was non-military social spending. Back in 1965, non-military social spending was minute at the federal level. At the state level, a lot of spending on education. But at the federal level, non-military spending was low. And since then, we've had 60 years of maniacs destroying the educational system, skewing the statistics to make the arguments that borrowing more money to spend it on idiots like AOC and Bernie and their stupid ideas makes sense. We created this vast set of bureaucracies, which is only now being brought somewhat into the diet mode, not the crash diet, but somewhat the diet mode. And to say after 60 years of protesting and 60 years of spending probably over $100 trillion by now, well over, maybe a quadrillion dollars on social bullshit. And you look at these, I had no idea how bloated, for example, the educational system, Department of Education is. Its bureaucracy is immense. The pay levels of these bureaucrats are off the charts. They don't show up to work, after COVID. And then they claim they're doing this work, but instead of doing any work, they hire McKinsey and Booz Allen and these other firms to try to do the work that you've already paid the government workers to do. So it's just out of control insanity. And it's like, you know, a kid at an 11-year-old at a birthday party, somebody else's birthday party, bitching because he or she can't have a 15th slice of cake and another 12 sodas. I mean, it's ridiculous, these
How many,
arguments.
how many slices are in a cake?
Big cakes, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean, and people see through this shit. I saw one very encouraging thing that whatever the next, is it Gen Z, the rising generation? I just have
I
lost count of
guess.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. But Gen Z, the pollsters, the liberal pollsters are horrified that Gen Z are conservative. You know, they reject the youth, you know, that has been victimized by Randy Weingarten, the leader of
Yeah.
the teachers union, by the COVID lockdowns, by the insane 4-year period. And if you're 16 when Biden went in there, now you're 20, right? And you've watched for 4 years. Unless you're dumber than Methuselah, dumber than, you know, Jasmine Crockett, you have to understand that the election of 2020 was definitely stolen and that Joe Biden was not in control of the Biden administration by any way, shape, way. He just wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, he was an actor, a bad actor, and he let a whole bunch of people, like, I'm not saying Norm Eisen himself did this, but people like Norm Eisen and Andrew Weissman and Ron Klain, the chief of staff, and his successor, Zients, or whatever you pronounce that name. They were manipulating everything. They were manipulating the media. They were canceling journalists who were critical. They were making sure that the people who could speak for the Biden administration would come on shows that would be critical of Trump and favorable to Biden. The whole 4 years of the Biden presidency was one sick joke. Bad policy after bad policy. He was the worst president ever. I think we can safely say far worse than Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
And the fact recently that Trump is pulling all these security clearances of a lot, it's really unprecedented. I mean, Biden broke the precedent when he pulled Trump's security clearance, but now Trump is going whole hog against the guts of this charade, which really dates back prior, I think, even to the attempt by Hillary to sabotage Trump, to encourage Trump to run, and then to sabotage his candidacy. And then once she lost decisively, to do everything she could to cancel Trump. I mean, that was a bad mistake. If you're going to do that, what's the expression? If you're going to shoot the king, make sure you kill him.
Yeah.
And I'm not advocating violence here, but I'm just saying she went down that path, and Obama with her, and it didn't work. And of course, there is going to be retribution, and there must be retribution. You cannot let this precedent stand. I mean, more and more stuff is coming out. There's a journalist called Hans Monkey, and not Monkey, but Monkey, and he's very good. He's got a colleague, Jeff Carlson. They write a lot of things together in various ways. I think they now have a Substack together, maybe a podcast together. But they've been dogged on exposing the Russian collusion delusion, the extent to which John Brennan, the CIA director, decided to take down Donald Trump. And he had a lot of allies with him, and many of those allies are still in government, believing that from the inside they can take down the Trump administration. And I think this is part and parcel that the CIA has been, and the deep state has been, unchecked for too long. They've been, whoever came up with the idea that regime change is something that the United States taxpayers should pay for because we're so good at running our own country that we ought to meddle in the affairs of others, that person and that philosophy needs to be just utterly discredited. There need to be serious crimes, penalties for using taxpayer money to intervene in other countries' elections. I mean, it's just not what we are doing a very poor job at home. And it seems that decades of intervening in other countries led some in Washington, D.C. and the Beltway to figure out, well, why don't we get in the business of regime change at all? So I think it's time. One of the things I was talking about with Lionel, you know, if you think about Bill Clinton's first election, George H.W. Bush had a 90% approval rating, 90. after liberating Kuwait. And that was less than, I think, that was about 2 years. Was it? It was less than 2 years. He liberated Kuwait in 91, in February or thereabouts of 91. And the election was November of 92. So he's at a 90% approval rating after Kuwait is liberated. The funds for that exercise were sourced externally. Nick Brady was then the Treasury Secretary. He flew around the world saying, hey, Japan, you kick in a lot of money. Other countries, you kick in. That exercise didn't cost us trillions of dollars. It was successful. It shocked the Soviet Union. The capabilities of our military had not, prior to the Vietnam debacle, we hadn't had until the Kuwait exercise. We had Grenada, which was nothing serious. But I mean, the liberating Kuwait exercise was a tour de force. And here Bush somehow manages to lose to Bill Clinton. And how did Ross Perot get thrown into that mix? And what really happened? I mean, was that a case where the deep state got tired of George H.W. Bush and wanted a more malleable president and manipulated things internally to, put a deeply challenged person and family into the White House, knowing that they could try to control Bill Clinton?
Just briefly, not to derail, Charles, but on Ross Perot, I do believe he played some role in the formation of Blackwater, because remember, he had these EDS people who were doing something in Iran, and
right.
He had to rescue them. I think something happened where this led to the creation of Blackwater.
Could be. But so you think about Bill Clinton now, with the benefit of hindsight. I mean, thank God he's not the president anymore. And thank God Hillary's not the president. But his whole life story is really implausible. And if you had a well-run security agency, he's the kind of person who would never get a security clearance, given his predilections and foibles and, his volcanic temper. And, I don't think there's something off with him. And then you think about his successor, George W. Bush, a deeply troubled man, another deeply troubled, strange family. How was he selected to run? How did he magically get this chance to make so much money with the Texas Rangers? Then you have Obama. To this date, we still don't understand his background. I mean, we don't understand. I could tell you, I started work. I went straight from college to business school. I had summer jobs. I started work. I graduated, I think, June 5th, 1980, and I started work June 9th, 1980. And so in my earliest full-time jobs, I was working almost 24/7 for the first year. And, I can look over in my library here, and there are a whole bunch of tombstones, lucite's, that shows the deals that were completed. And I have a list of other ones that were attempted. So you want to find out what I was doing right out of college, you can. With Obama for 5 years, nobody really knows what the hell he was doing. And it's not like he had covered himself with glory before he got on the program of, let's give this guy every freaking award that's out there. Oscar, Nobel Peace Prize, give him a Grammy for his audiobook. I mean, but in his early days, he was an undistinguished student in high school, by all accounts. And at his first college, nobody seems to know what he was doing at Columbia. After Columbia, nobody seems to know what he was doing. He was, a fake top student at Harvard. They sold him as first president of the Harvard Law Review without explaining to people like me and to you that's a nothing job. You're the business manager of a paper. The real legal scholars are editors. And to be an editor, you've got to write a note. You've got to write an article for the Harvard Law. He never did that. He was just the president, and that's it's a bullshit job with other people doing the hard work for you. So Obama's resume is all manufactured. Then you look at Kamala Harris. There's a joke, or Biden, the senator from MBNA. So for how long has the deep state been in the position of selecting and the top leadership of the executive branch And we know that under Obama, the deep state spied on multiple foreign leaders, right? We know that the Germans were outraged when they hacked into Angela Merkel's personal cell phone. There are the reports in what is left of the legacy media that under Obama, the deep state spied on the Supreme Court, on courts, on the House of Representatives, on senators. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And where are the trophies? I mean, what awards have we won as a country since 1992? And where are the success stories?
Yeah, everything's just getting way worse.
Right. So let's stop doing this shit. Let's stop doing stupid shit.
Yeah, it's not helping.
And they're at it again. The best they can do. Let's get a superstar, the future of the Democratic Party. That's a 6-month-old baby, you moron. Change its diaper. I mean, who's going to take on J.D. Vance in 2028? Where's their deep bench? Tampon Tim, he got out there at that rally.
Oh,
and he's trying to walk back his comments. He wasn't joking. He was deadly serious.
He was trying to joke, but the point is, it's a joke at the expense of, hey, ha ha ha, let's destroy a company. It's like, Dick, you're promoting violence. You're voting against a company that gives people jobs and pay taxes. I mean, that was the issue I had. I think a lot of people saw, Charles, I was down there over at Tesla yesterday, just having some words with some of the geniuses that had showed up to protest outside there. People were very interested in this clip. It had over 1 million views in 24 hours. The thing that's interesting about it, though, Charles, is that, see, the police are doing nothing. When I used this guy's name, I referred to him as Sergeant, whatever his name is. See how he looked at me, snapped to attention? He knows these people aren't allowed to do this, and that if there's any real cop inside that guy, we're witnessing the struggle as he's allowing this person to break the law. Because what these people are trying to do is exactly what Orrin Levi does. This guy wants me to swing at him or lunge at him or whatever, and then all these cops would arrest me. So I was drawing him out by forcing him to do that so much, and I was screaming at this stupid idiot Mottola, saying this is menacing, this is harassment, and he eventually stepped in and said, you can't chase the guy around. But the cops are allowing this to happen, Charles. It doesn't make sense to me. Why wouldn't Elon Musk, he's got the same attorney as the mayor of New York. Why wouldn't he just pick up the phone and say, hey, Alex Spiro, can you please tell your client, Eric Adams, since he's all on board with helping Donald Trump because of this amazing plea deal or whatever, can you please tell your client to stop booking permits for protesters outside my store? This guy, Charles, was leading the protest at the Eric Adams hearing. And he's wearing a Sunrise Movement t-shirt underneath that tank top. He put that tank top on over to hide the Sunrise t-shirt that I got him wearing elsewhere in the video. So it's a lot of reconnaissance I'm doing down there. Obviously, these are coordinated things, and the police appear to be involved.
Well, and also, just back for a second on that's great work you've been doing there. But back on Tim Walz, you get up there and say he's looking at his watch to check and see, and he's joyful every time tests the stock price. And somebody point, hey Tim, you do understand that the government, the state government of owns over 1 million shares of Tesla, right? You get that, right? That the pensions for Minnesota teachers are going to be worse off if Tesla stock goes down. I mean, the guy, he should be nowhere near politics. He should be nowhere near adolescent children either.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a crazy person. And at Minnesota, to me, it seems to be a state filled with crazy people. I mean, it's
an idiot
just
too.
Well, Amy, what's her name? Klobuchar's from Minnesota.
You're right.
And there's been a long list of lunatics up in Minnesota. I don't know if Minnesota has ever been great in the past, so it'd be nice to make Minnesota great with a different team in there. But
Nimga.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean,
well,
it's
Charles,
just
we're just about set here to blast off, not to the ISS and rescue anybody, but to the First Amendment Forum, where people will be able to join us. Sponsors of the show can join us, and people who'd like to become sponsors can do that on odyssey.com/@ Crowdsource the Truth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We've got a lot to talk about, so stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back. Thanks for watching.